An interview yesterday with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, exposes that this administration is flying completely blind with no idea whatsoever what they are doing with the situation in Venezuela. Rubio kind of inadvertently exposes Donald Trump's incompetence and shows that there is no plan, there is no strategy, it is merely chaos. Kristen Welker asked Marco Rubio, "Are you running Venezuela right now?" Rubio can't really answer the question, and so he doesn't.
Mr. Secretary, who is in charge? Are you running Venezuela right now?
Yeah, I mean, I keep people, fixating on that. Here's the bottom line on it is we expect to see changes in Venezuela. Changes of all kinds, long-term, short-term. We'd love to see all kinds of changes, but the most immediate changes are the ones that are in the national interest of the United States. That's why we're involved here, because of how it applies and has a direct impact on the United States. Okay, we are not going to be able to allow in our hemisphere a country that becomes a crossroads for the activities of all of our adversaries around the world. We just can't allow it. We can't have a country where the people in charge of its military and in charge of its police department are openly cooperating with drug trafficking organizations. We're not going to allow that.
Yeah. You might be saying, David, I think you skipped the part where he answers the question of who's running Venezuela. He didn't answer that question. And it's becoming very clear that whatever changes Marco has in mind, the VP to Maduro, Delcy Rodriguez, does not seem eager to give up power and may even remain in power. Now, we're going to get to where public opinion is about that in a moment. If indeed there are going to be what we might call legitimate changes in Venezuela, there should be an election. I agree with that, by the way. Maduro was a horrible autocrat, and despite finding what Trump did to be illegal and a total and complete disaster, that doesn't mean I am a supporter of Nicolas Maduro. One of the most important things for Venezuela would be to have a real election, a free and fair election soon. Kristen Welker asks Marco Rubio, when is the election going to be? Not exactly an answer there either.
You talk about a holistic transition. I think there's a lot of focus on potential elections. How soon will elections be held? Within 30 days, Mr. Secretary?
Elections? Well, look, this is a country that's been governed by this regime now for 14 or 15 years. The elections should have happened a long time ago. The elections did happen. They lost them, and they didn't count the votes, or they refused to count the votes, and everyone knows it. So all of that, I think, is premature at this point. There's a lot of work to be done here. Right now, what we are focused in, let's be realistic here, what we are focused on right now is all of the problems we had with when Maduro was there. We still have those problems in terms of them needing to be addressed. We are going to give people an opportunity to address those challenges and those problems. Until they address it, they will continue to face this oil quarantine. They will continue to face pressure from the United States. We will continue to target drug boats if they try to run towards the United States. We will continue to seize the boats that are sanctioned with court orders.
Okay. So he's not going to answer the question about elections either. Who's in charge? He's not telling us. When is the election? He's not telling us. It's a very strange regime change to kidnap the president, and then now the VP of that same regime is in power, and the same power structure is in power, and the same generals are in power. And again, I don't say this out of saying I support regime change. I'm against American-led regime change in Venezuela. But if you are doing it, but you leave essentially the full regime in power, it's kind of weird. Interestingly, when you look at the betting markets like Kalshi, who will lead Venezuela at the end of 2026, 45% and climbing believe that it is going to be the former VP and current acting president, Delcy Rodriguez. It's increasingly looking like it is regime change that leaves the exact same regime. And more people, at least according to this Kalshi betting market, believe that the the Trump administration most likely is going to leave the regime in power, just with no more Maduro. George Stephanopoulos also interviewed Secretary of State Marco Rubio and said the drug trafficking explanation, which, by the way, almost everyone's forgotten about now, doesn't really make sense because Trump has pardoned drug traffickers. And Rubio basically says, I was never involved in that.
As you know,
America
the Congressional Gang of Eight has a history of not leaking. But you mentioned the indictment of Mr. Maduro, and of course it does detail his drug running operations. In the same jurisdiction, the former president of Honduras was actually convicted on similar charges, yet the president pardoned him. Here's what the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, had to say about that. He said, "You cannot credibly argue that drug trafficking charges demand invasion in one case while issuing a pardon in another." What's your response?
Well, the president has the pardon authority. He's the one that reviewed the file with the folks at the White House to make these pardon decisions, and I refer questions to them on it because I'm not involved in the pardon process. So I can't comment on that because I wasn't involved in that process. But the president
Kind of weird that the Secretary of State wouldn't be involved in that. It's a pretty major decision to make.
outlined yesterday that he felt that in that particular case there was unfairness, and that there was unfairness in the way that individual was treated. And he also pointed to the fact that the party that's now won the elections in Honduras had asked for this. And so I would point to those comments as a rationale for it. In the case of Maduro, look, it's very simple. This guy was indicted. No one ever did anything about it. He didn't think he was under threat or that the indictment was ever going to be enforced. It was enforced yesterday.
Hernandez was convicted by a jury.
I understand. You're asking me. The pardon authority is something that, I'm not involved in my role. I'm not criticizing it. I can't just comment on it because I just wasn't involved in those deliberations.
Do you support it?
I wasn't involved in those deliberations. I haven't looked at the case file. I haven't looked at the arguments made by, I've got a bunch of other things going on that are within my...
Marco's too busy to even give an opinion on that one. So the takeaway, they are bloodthirsty. They want more, and we'll get to that, but just flying completely blind and seemingly dealing with narco trafficking while pardoning narco traffickers, going after authoritarians while loving other authoritarians, doing regime change while leaving the regime in place, and then going for the oil, which American companies seem to want nothing to do with. What a world of incompetence we live in. Now, what is the next invasion? Let's get to that next.